Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about South Donetsk direction, where we received the video that confirms the Russian progress further in the western direction. I'll remind you that this entire territory used to be as a contested area. Some mappers a few weeks ago adjusted these territories, colored them with the territory under Russian control, but just today we got the first video that confirmed the additional Russian progress. For example, in this video that was published by the Ukrainian sources, we can see the Ukrainian FPV drone that destroyed the abandoned Russian tank during the another attack towards Ukrainian positions. So, and as I understand, based on this video, most of the mappers made their adjustments. As for the northern part, we have an additional video of destroyed Russian tank. In this video, we can see another attempt to attack from the Russian side on Ukrainian positions, of 46th Air Mobile Brigade. And as you can see, the Ukrainians were attacking the Russian tanks that were clearing and demining area. So, based on this video, we see that the Russians continue preparation this territory before further attempts to attack in direction of Konstantinovka from the north. As for the western Avdiivka, we haven't received anything, just regular updates, artillery strikes, and for example in this video we can see how the Russians were bombing the positions of army forces to Ukraine inside of the village by the name of Yevgenievka. During the previous night we got a lot of very interesting details about this territory. The Russians reported that they established complete control or fire control over this territory, and according to information we have, starting this night the Ukrainians began abandoning their positions, withdrawing their positions towards more reliable territories in the western part of this area. Now let's move probably to the most important updates concerning Donetsk, New York agglomeration. Today we got additional details about the situation in New York, Yurievka. The sources reported that the situation was very difficult in this direction, and mainly due to the critical situation with 206th Territory Defense Battalion. I'll remind you that a few weeks ago the Ukrainians decided to make rotation, and they changed to 41st Mechanized Brigade for 24th Mechanized Brigade, and 41st Brigade arrived here from Chasiv Yar direction, where they were defeated, and to reinforce this brigade the Ukrainians decided to give them additional battalions from different other forces, and 206th Territory Battalion was one of the battalions that was attached to 41st Brigade, just with the purpose to stabilize the situation before any Russian offensive. And when the Russians started offensives, the commanders of 41st Mechanized Brigade decided to save their own personnel, and they sent 206th Battalion to stabilize the situation. But basically this 206th Brigade Battalion was completely defeated in the vicinity of New York, and during just 2 or 3 days this battalion lost more than 70, 80 or 80% of the personnel. So the sources a few days ago reported that just for a few days of clashes they lost up to 200 soldiers. So significant losses, of course, and after such a big defeat the Ukrainians haven't managed to find any additional sources how to stabilize the situation and how to reinforce the direction. And this is the reason why the Russians were so successful in this area, and why the Russians and how the Russians managed to establish significant control over the south of New York, Yurievka, and according to different sources the Russians also entered Petrovska Gora. So this is the situation about New York. As for Donetsk agglomeration, as you can see, we have adjusted the map and we have colored this part of Pivnitne under complete Russian control. During the previous night we got the first video confirming the Russian presence in this area. For example, in this video we can see the Ukrainian soldier who was attacking the Russian positions, and this is already the clashes inside of the citadel, the second citadel in Donetsk. In a second we will return back on map and we will try to understand where exactly was located the Ukrainian soldiers and where exactly was located the Russian soldiers. So in this video, if we return back on map, the Ukrainian soldier was located inside of this building. So the Ukrainian soldier was located there, and from this position, from this first, second, 10th floor from this building, the Ukrainian soldier was attacking the Russian forces, the Russian soldiers, the Russian positions in this area. So the Russian soldiers most likely were located somewhere in the building by along University Street 21. So this situation, based on this video, we have adjusted the map and colored these fields and this significant territory under complete Russian control. Furthermore, we received during the previous night lots of videos of how the Russians began bombing and attacking Ukrainian positions in the citadel. And this is very important video because almost for the previous 2 weeks after the Russians began offensive operation in Donetsk, New York, we haven't received almost anything about artillery strikes, aviation strikes, which confirms that the Russians were moving, and so that's why they couldn't use heavy artillery, because they were risk to attack and bomb their own forces. And starting of today, yesterday, and the previous days, we start receiving videos of the use of heavy weapon, which confirms that the situation is getting slower and slower. The Russians are losing their speed. It's normal process, because anyway, regarding the current speed of the Russian forces, we see that they managed to establish significant control, and now we are going to face the situation as we can see right now in Volchansk. The Russians will be forced to stop at some areas, and they will be forced to begin clearing of, let's say, this citadel. Obviously, they're gonna need to spend maybe 2-3 weeks to complete the battle for the citadel. Of course, the Russians will need 2-3 weeks to complete the battle for Petrovska Gora that they managed to enter. So during the next few days, during the next few weeks, probably there's going to be some progress, but not inside of the citadel, inside of the agglomeration. Most likely the Russians will be able to improve their positions on the flanks of this area. As for Chasiv Yar, we haven't received anything from this direction. There is a currently operational pause. The Russians are regrouping, bringing additional forces, and preparing before the next attempt, before the next waves of attacks in direction of the central and the western Chasiv Yar. Now let's move in the northern area. We have additional reports from Kupyansk direction. According to some Russian sources, they managed to establish complete control over the southern part of Pishane. As you can see in this map, Pishane is split in two parts. There is a northern part and the southern part, and the village itself is split by the river by the name of Pishane. So according to some Russian sources, the southern part is the entire southern part is already under complete Russian control. For now, we're not going to adjust the map because the source that provided this information is not 100% reliable. But if this information is correct, obviously the situation for the Ukrainians in this direction is getting more and more difficult. Now let's move to Volchansk. Today, the group of forces north provided us additional updates about the current status of this direction. These sources reported that the Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours suffered significant losses either in Volchansk and in the Gluboka direction. As for Gluboka, the Ukrainians during the previous night conducted a very powerful counterattack from many directions in direction of Gluboka, but as a result of clashes, the Ukrainians lost up to 50 soldiers during those attempts, and they were forced to fall back. The Ukrainians were attacking the Russians with the forces of 92nd Assault Brigade. As for Volchansk itself, the Ukrainians during the previous night made more attempts to cross the river to concentrate some additional forces in the northern part, but as a result of clashes, as a result of artillery strikes on pontoon bridges and river crossings, the Ukrainians lost up to 30 soldiers. And the most important updates from this direction are coming from Burgovatka. Today, the group of forces north reported or continue reporting for the 4th or 5th day in a row about additional progress of the armed forces of Russian Federation in the east, to the east of Burgovatka. And according to the latest updates, the Russians managed to enter the forest that located between Prilipka, Gravska, and Burgovatka itself. So if this information is correct, and if the Russians are able to dig in deeper in the forest, obviously the Ukrainians lost any possibilities to force the Russians to fall back, because under the protection of forest, Ukrainians has much less chances to win this battle or to restore control over the lost territories. And this is very important because now the Russians, probably after they enter the forest, will try to attack the village of Prilipka, and after the fall of Prilipka, the Ukrainians will lose any single possibility to do anything with the Russians in this direction. And now let's talk about political events. We have lots of very interesting details and very interesting updates. The most important is that today the Prime Minister of Hungary will visit Russia, will have a meeting with Putin. If you remember, a few days ago, the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, visited Kiev, and he talked with Zelensky about chances of the beginning of the peace process. But later we got reports report that Zelensky rejected any proposal from Viktor Orban, and he returned back to Hungary. These days, Vladimir Putin had lots of tight schedule. He had lots of meetings in Kazakhstan. He had a meeting with Xi Jinping. And by the way, according to information we have, the relations between Russia and Xi Jinping is the best ever since the beginning of creation of the world. So, and as I understand, today Putin is going to come back to Russia, to Moscow, and Viktor Orban is going to visit, and probably he will bring the answer of Zelensky personally to Putin, or maybe Zelensky suggested something from his side, maybe some clarifications, some details. But anyway, this is, we can say, the first contact between Putin and Zelensky, more or less official contact between Putin and Zelensky since the beginning of the special military operation. Of course, there is something like a middleware, and Orban is something in the middle who tries to negotiate these two people. So let's wait for details, because obviously they're going to be very interesting. Anyway, regarding the conversation, regarding the message that Orban is going to bring to Putin today, is Putin stated that Zelensky is no longer a valid president. He expired president, as people from Sierra region like to call Zelensky, and he told that there is no even reason to talk with Ukraine parliament. That is, according to Putin, is the only legal power in Ukraine, because this parliament also occupied and captured by Zelensky and his team. Now let's move to other important European events and reports. And according to information we have, very interesting details are coming from the United Kingdom, and the party of the current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, Conservatives, got just 131 seats in the United Kingdom Parliament, which is complete defeat in this year, and most likely this will force Sunak to leave his chair, and probably in the very near future the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom will be changed for somebody else. As for the United States of America, we continue receiving probably interesting reports about Joe Biden. Today he reported that he is planning to sleep more, because this is the reason why he lost debates with Donald Trump. So we'll see whether the long sleep will help him to handle with the current situation. And the most important, that according to information we have, during the NATO summit that is going to take place in Washington on the 9th till 11th July, the Ukrainians are planning to make ultimatum to the NATO countries regarding its memberships in this organization, because the Ukrainians are also exhausted. According to Zelensky, they have prepared additional 14th Brigade for counter-offensive operation. The Ukrainians are fighting for the NATO in Western countries, but as we can see, according to Zelensky, according to the Ukrainians, they don't see the same things from the NATO in Western countries. So very interesting. Probably this NATO summit is going to be very powerful, very decisive, not for Ukrainians but also for the entire world. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.